They made America laugh harder than almost any show in history. Week after week, the Beverly Hillbillies delivered absurdity wrapped in innocence. A poor mountain family who struck oil and landed in the heart of Beverly Hills, shaking up a world of suits, banks, and socialites with their backwoods charm. But what if the laughter came at a cost? What if behind every punchline, every canned chuckle, there were actors silently drowning in loneliness, illness, or regret? This wasn't just a sitcom, it was a cultural juggernaut. From the moment Jed Clampett fired his rifle and hit black gold, millions were hooked. But while the Clampetts struck riches on screen, many of the actors never found peace off it. Some were typecast for life, others died too soon, and a few left behind secrets they took to the grave. They weren't just characters, they were pioneers of early television, carving their names into living rooms across the country. But what happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Who thrived? Who vanished? And whose fame came with a hidden price? In this video, we journey beyond the punchlines to reveal the real stories of 5 Beverly Hillbillies cast members who died, some quietly, some tragically, and all with far more behind their eyes than we ever imagined. This is not just a tribute, it's a reckoning. Stay with us. What you're about to discover might just change how you remember them forever. Buddy Ebsen, Jed Clampett. He was never supposed to be a star. Not by Hollywood standards. Too tall, too lanky, too country. But Buddy Ebsen didn't need approval from anyone to belong. His path to fame wasn't paved in charm and easy success. It was built on resilience, quiet rage, and an almost stubborn refusal to disappear. Before he ever stepped onto that Beverly Hills mansion set as Jed Clampett, Buddy had already survived the kind of heartbreak that would have broken lesser men. Born Christian Ludolph Ebsen Jr. on April 2, 1908, in Belleville, Illinois, Buddy grew up in Florida where his father ran a dance studio. The rhythm was in his blood early. Alongside his sister Vilma, he formed a vaudeville dance duo that charmed its way through New York's theaters and eventually caught Hollywood's attention. Buddy moved with grace, all limbs and ease, a dancer with the instincts of a storyteller. By the 1930s, he was sharing the screen with Shirley Temple, Judy Garland, and Eleanor Powell. He was the dancer everyone recognized, but no one truly saw. And then came the moment that changed everything. Cast in one of the most iconic films of the era, Buddy was ready for his breakthrough, until it nearly killed him. The makeup used for his role contained toxic aluminum dust. Within days, his lungs began to fail. He collapsed, was hospitalized, gasped for air. The role was recast. His scenes res-hot. His name removed. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. A career on the edge of stardom wiped clean like chalk from a board. But Buddy didn't fold. He returned to the stage, took small parts, reinvented himself in silence. He never chased the spotlight. He waited for it to return on his terms. And then, at 54, it did. In 1962, he stepped into the boots of Jed Clampett, a soft-spoken mountain man who strikes oil and moves his family into the posh madness of Beverly Hills. On paper, the role was ridiculous, but Buddy played it with heart. He didn't mock the character. He honored him. Jed was honest, grounded, unshakable. And in a world obsessed with flash and wealth, audiences clung to that. The Beverly Hillbillies became one of the most watched shows in television history. Buddy Ebsen, once forgotten, was now a household name. But the role, as beloved as it was, came with chains. To millions, he was Jed, and only Jed. A symbol of decency, yes, but also a box he couldn't fully escape. When the series ended in 1971, Buddy did what he always did. He adapted. He returned to television in Barnaby Jones, playing a methodical private investigator. It was a quieter kind of role, but no less commanding. The show ran 8 seasons. Another chapter, another reinvention, all without fanfare. In private life, Buddy was just as enigmatic. Married 3 times, father to 7 children, he stayed out of tabloids and focused on family, writing, painting, and living on his own terms. He didn't give in to bitterness. He didn't chase legacy. He simply endured. Gracefully, he died on July 6, 2003, at the age of 95, from complications of pneumonia. There were no grand tributes, no primetime specials, just silence. Fitting, perhaps, for a man who had spent most of his life doing the work without demanding applause. But the truth is, he never needed it. Buddy Ebsen wasn't just Jed Clampett. He was a survivor of a brutal industry, a forgotten dancer who became a television legend, a man who never stopped evolving. And behind that soft drawl and humble smile was a life forged in disappointment, discipline, and quiet triumph. His story wasn't loud, but it lasted. Irene Ryan, Granny, Daisy Mae Moses. She was fire in a teacup, a wiry frame stuffed with fury, folklore, and the kind of mountain wisdom that could silence a room. As Granny in the Beverly Hillbillies, Irene Ryan didn't just steal scenes, she set them ablaze. But off-screen, the woman behind the sass carried a life far more solitary, bittersweet, and quietly heroic than the shotgun-wielding matriarch the world came to love. Born Jessie Irene Noblet on October 17, 1902, in El Paso, Texas, Irene's journey to stardom didn't begin in youth. It waited until age was already pressing in. She honed her craft on the vaudeville stage, performing alongside her then-husband Tim Ryan in a comic duo that toured America's small-town theaters. For years, she played to laughter in smoky auditoriums, sharpening a comedic timing that would later make her unforgettable. After divorcing Tim, she carved her own path. No partner, no fame, just grit and work ethic. The climb was slow. Radio gigs, minor film roles, a woman aging in an industry obsessed with youth. But she never quit. She kept showing up. Until, finally, the call came. In 1962, at the age of 60, she was cast in the Beverly Hillbillies as Daisy Moses, better known as Granny. It was meant to be comedic seasoning, but Irene turned it into the show's secret weapon. Granny was more than just an old woman in spectacles. She was fierce, physical, and hilariously volatile. With wild eyes and frontier instincts, she could cure an ailment, threaten a banker, or outdrink a cowboy, all in the same scene. And Irene Ryan, beneath the costume and wig, brought real fire to the part. She played Granny like she was born to it, because in many ways, she was. This was a lifetime of struggle funneled into a character that finally fit. But the role also came at a price. Hollywood didn't see Irene Ryan. It saw Granny, and only Granny. Viewers assumed she was well into her 80s when she was actually in her early 60s. The heavy makeup, gray wig, and old lady act cemented the illusion. Even after the series ended in 1971, casting directors struggled to see her as anything but the Clampett family matriarch. But Irene didn't fade quietly. She took to Broadway and, in a surprise to many, landed a major role in the musical Pippin. Critics praised her. Audiences adored her. It was a second act, bright, bold, unexpected. But behind the curtain, something was wrong. Irene began to feel ill during the run. Her body weakened. Doctors delivered the brutal truth: glioblastoma, an aggressive, inoperable brain tumor. Alongside it, heart disease. Her final performance came not with a bow, but with quiet retreat. She left the stage and never returned. Irene Ryan died on April 26, 1973, at the age of 70. She had no children, no husband, no surviving family. But what she left behind spoke louder than bloodlines. Her estate, valued at over $1 million, was used to establish the Irene Ryan Foundation, a scholarship program for young actors and actresses in theater. Even in death, she chose to lift others. She was the first among the Beverly Hillbillies cast to pass, the first light to flicker out, but perhaps the one whose presence never truly left. Her gravestone bears a single word: Granny. No birth name, no titles, just the character who brought her fame, love, and immortality. For those who knew her only through a television screen, Irene Ryan was a firecracker wrapped in gingham. But for those who look closer, who see past the laughs, she was something even rarer. A woman who waited a lifetime for the right role, and when it came, she burned so brightly that no one has ever quite replaced her. Donna Douglas, Ellie Mae Clampett. She was the heartthrob of the show, the Southern belle with golden curls, a wardrobe of denim, and an unshakable bond with animals. Ellie Mae Clampett wasn't just eye candy. She was charm, innocence, and strength in one unforgettable package. And Donna Douglas, the woman who played her, became an overnight icon. But for Donna, fame didn't just open doors, It locked her inside a role so beloved that it nearly eclipsed her entire identity. Born Doris Ione Smith on September 26, 1932, in the tiny town of Pride, Louisiana, Donna grew up surrounded by bayous and backyard critters. She wasn't polished Hollywood. She was real Southern blood, tough, modest, deeply religious. By her early 20s, she had already been a wife, a mother, and a divorcee. She entered beauty pageants almost on a whim, winning Miss Baton Rouge and later Miss New Orleans. From there, she moved to New York, where her striking looks and natural warmth landed her modeling jobs and small TV appearances. Her big break came in one of the most haunting episodes of The Twilight Zone, Eye of the Beholder. Though her face only appeared in the final moments, it was enough. She had the kind of screen presence you couldn't fake. Hollywood noticed. In 1962, Donna was cast as Ellie Mae Clampett, the animal-loving daughter of Jed Clampett in the Beverly Hillbillies. It was her 30th birthday when the first episode aired. The timing was uncanny, like the role had waited for her. Audiences fell in love instantly. Ellie Mae wasn't just pretty. She was pure-hearted, brave, loyal. She could cradle a baby possum and break a man's nose with equal tenderness. Donna played her with complete sincerity, never mocking, never forced. But that devotion came with a price. Ellie Mae became so iconic, so ingrained in pop culture, that Donna Douglas struggled to escape her shadow. Casting directors didn't want Donna, they wanted Ellie. She was typecast into sweet, wholesome roles that never let her stretch. And when she turned them down for being too risque or too shallow, the offers stopped altogether. In the years after the Beverly Hillbillies, Donna drifted out of the acting spotlight. But she didn't vanish. She became a gospel singer, a motivational speaker, a writer of Christian-themed children's books. She leaned into her faith, her values, and the kind of life that made her feel whole. For a while, she even sold real estate in Beverly Hills. Ironic, considering how her character had once fumbled through that very world on screen. She never publicly resented the fame that Ellie Mae brought her. In fact, she embraced it on her terms. She signed autographs with joy, attended fan conventions with grace, and always spoke of the show with gratitude. But behind the smiles, there was a woman who knew that Hollywood had placed her in a box and never let her out. Donna Douglas died on January 1, 2015, from pancreatic cancer. She passed away in Louisiana, not far from where her story began. No scandal, no tabloid whispers, just a quiet end to a life that had touched millions. She once said, "Whatever I've done, I've tried to do the best I could with the talent God gave me." And maybe that's the clearest picture of who she really was. Not a starlet, not a stereotype, but a woman who carried kindness like armor and walked away from fame with her soul intact. Ellie Mae was a role, but Donna Douglas was the real deal. And long after the cameras stopped rolling, the light she brought never truly faded. Raymond Bailey, Milburn Drysdale. He played the banker everyone loved to hate, the image-obsessed, money-hungry executive whose panic attacks were often funnier than the punchlines. But behind the pompous exterior of Milburn Drysdale was Raymond Bailey, a man who knew rejection more intimately than fame. For him, success didn't come in youth, and when it finally did arrive, it came wrapped in irony, just as his grip on health and time was slipping away. Born on May 6, 1904, in San Francisco, California, Raymond Bailey wasn't an overnight star. In fact, he barely made it into the business at all. As a young man, he moved to Hollywood with the hope of breaking into movies, but the dream disintegrated quickly. He was told he didn't have the look, the charisma, or the presence. So he walked away, not just from acting, but from the entire town. He became a seaman, traveling the world on cargo ships, working odd jobs from the docks to the fields. At one point, he even labored on a pineapple plantation in Hawaii and performed in local theater just to stay connected to the stage. For years, his name meant nothing in Hollywood, and yet he carried the dream quietly, waiting for another shot. When he finally returned to Los Angeles in the late 1930s, things began to change. Slowly, he found small parts, then bigger ones. He built a career in television during its golden age, often playing men of authority, lawyers, judges, businessmen. He had the face for it. Sharp, serious, a little smug. By the time he was cast in the Beverly Hillbillies in 1962, He was nearly 60 years old, and the role of Milburn Drysdale, the nervous, greedy president of the Commerce Bank, fit him like a second skin. Bailey played Drysdale with a perfect blend of desperation and comedy. Every time Jed Clampett threatened to move his millions to another bank, Drysdale's world unraveled. His manic efforts to keep the Clampetts happy while clinging to their fortune became a running gag that helped power the show. But what audiences didn't see was that while Raymond was giving the performance of his life, his health was quietly slipping away. By the late 1960s, Bailey began showing early symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. At first, it was subtle, missed lines, moments of confusion. But as the disease progressed, the cast and crew began adjusting around him. Scripts were simplified, scenes restructured. His professionalism never wavered, but the toll was visible to those who looked closely. He fought through it with quiet dignity, determined to stay until the very end. When the Beverly Hillbillies concluded in 1971, Bailey quietly retired from acting. He didn't chase more roles. He didn't seek another comeback. He simply disappeared from the spotlight, just as he had once vanished from Hollywood decades earlier. But this time, it was final. Raymond Bailey died on April 15, 1980, at the age of 75 from a heart attack. There were no long tributes, no press tours, no public mourning. His death was quiet, almost too quiet for a man who had finally gotten his moment, only to watch it slip away under the weight of a disease that robs not only memory, but presence. Yet his performance endures. In every rerun, every over-the-top outburst, every anxious glance at Jed's bank account, Raymond Bailey still breathes. His timing, his posture, his eyes, they told a story much bigger than comedy. They told the story of a man who waited a lifetime for someone to say action, and when they finally did, he never let go of the moment. He wasn't the star. He was the foil, the straight man, the clown in a business suit. And in playing that role to perfection, Raymond Bailey gave the Beverly Hillbillies its teeth and gave himself the career he had spent his whole life chasing. Even if it came late, even if it came with pain, it came. And that, in the end, was enough. Nancy Culp, Miss Jane Hathaway. She was the straight-laced assistant with a clipboard in one hand and unspoken longing in her eyes. Miss Jane Hathaway wasn't loud, flashy, or absurd like the others, but she grounded the Beverly Hillbillies with intelligence, restraint, and emotional nuance. And Nancy Culp, the actress behind her, was every bit as complex. Beneath the tailored suits and bird-watching quirks was a woman far ahead of her time, brilliant, bold, and quietly battling for space in a world that rarely understood her. Born Nancy Jane Culp on August 28, 1921, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, she wasn't destined for Hollywood. She was destined for academia. Nancy earned a master's degree in English and French, spoke multiple languages, and served with honor in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Her first job in the industry wasn't in front of a camera, it was behind it, working in publicity. She didn't dream of being an actress. Someone simply looked at her one day and said, "You belong on screen." And they were right. With her tall frame, sharp features, and refined voice, Nancy didn't fit the mold of a leading lady. But she had something rarer, presence. In the 1950s, she found her rhythm in television, often cast as bookish spinsters, nosy neighbors, or comic relief. Then, in 1962, the Beverly Hillbillies gave her a role that would define her forever: Miss Jane Hathaway, the loyal secretary to banker Milburn Drysdale. It would have been easy to make Jane a flat character, a rigid bureaucrat, a one-note foil. But Nancy gave her life. Her Jane was smart, capable, and heartbreakingly human. Audiences saw more than a secretary. They saw a woman navigating loneliness, smothered passion, and quiet exasperation with dignity and grace. And behind it all, Nancy Culp poured her own experience into the part. But like so many television stars of the era, Nancy found herself trapped by the success of the very role that made her famous. Casting directors couldn't see past Miss Hathaway. Offers slowed. The phone stopped ringing. But instead of fading into the background, Nancy did something few expected. She pivoted entirely. She went back to school. She taught. She mentored. She lectured on literature and acting, passing on her knowledge to younger generations. Her life after fame wasn't about recapturing the spotlight. It was about shaping others who still had time to chase it. Her personal life, like her performance, was layered and often unspoken. She never married. Rumors swirled about her orientation, but Nancy neither confirmed nor denied. She guarded her privacy fiercely, never allowing tabloids or fan speculation to dictate how she lived. In an industry obsessed with exposure, she chose mystery. In her final years, Nancy retired to Palm Springs, where she lived quietly among books, birds, and former colleagues who still spoke of her with admiration. She died on February 3, 1991, at the age of 69 after a battle with cancer. There were no grand farewells or legacy campaigns, just a quiet, dignified exit that matched the life she lived. Nancy Culp was never the loudest in the room. She didn't chase fame. She didn't pretend. She played her part, both on screen and in life, with authenticity. And when she had said all she needed to say, she stepped off stage with grace. In the Beverly Hillbillies, Miss Hathaway was the bridge between worlds, between Beverly Hills luxury and backwoods simplicity. In reality, Nancy Culp was something even more rare, a woman who refused to be defined by the role she played, and whose quiet strength still echoes in every scene she ever touched. They made us laugh. Every week, for nearly a decade, they brought absurdity, warmth, and something oddly comforting into American homes. The Clampetts were ridiculous, but we loved them. They were naive, misplaced, and often misunderstood. But beneath the comedy, the Beverly Hillbillies carried something deeper, a collision of worlds, values, and identities. And behind each of those characters were real people, flawed, brave, ambitious, carrying burdens the audience never saw. Buddy Ebsen wasn't just Jed Clampett. He was a nearly forgotten dancer who clawed his way back from industry exile and wore fame like an old jacket, comfortable but never flashy. Irene Ryan, who stole the show as Granny, had waited a lifetime for her moment and died not with bitterness, but with quiet generosity that still helps young actors today. Raymond Bailey, finally recognized after decades of rejection, had only a few brief years to enjoy success before illness dimmed his light. Donna Douglas, the beloved Ellie Mae, spent the rest of her life trying to prove she was more than her beauty, and did so with grace, faith, and fierce self-control. And Nancy Culp, the sharp mind behind Miss Hathaway, lived her life with the kind of quiet integrity and mystery that Hollywood never quite knew how to handle. They didn't just play roles. They built them. They gave us characters that outlived them. Characters who still walk across late-night reruns and streaming screens, decades after the lights went out on set. But now, when we laugh, maybe we'll do so with a little more understanding, a little more respect. Because behind every punchline, there was a person fighting for space, for meaning, for something that couldn't be written into a script. 5 cast members, 5 legacies, all gone, but none truly forgotten. If their stories moved you, subscribe to the channel. There are more untold truths behind the laughter, and more voices waiting to be remembered.